Welcome to Factory Access. This is our first episode, which is very exciting. I have a special guest who is an actor in his own right and a good friend, Mr. Ben O'Toole. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you.
I guess in the last couple of years, trajectory from being someone who graduated from drama school, went and did plays, and then working in film, I would say that there's been a lot of experiences that you would have had in a small amount of time. So I guess the number one question that I want to ask is that what is the fundamental difference for you in coming out of drama school and then being able to be a working actor?
For me, when we graduated, being from Brizzy and then, studying over at Perth, when we were faced with where we were going to live when we graduated, for me it was a bit of a no-brainer with Sydney because we had such a community there already from the graduates that had come before us and were coming after us. There was sort of like a bit of a family to kind of graduate into down in Sydney. So we did our showcase and I ended up spending a couple of years down there before shooting off over to the States. And whilst I was in Sydney, I was jobbing and, I was getting bits and bobs, but long before it became a full-time career or, sort of something that it pays my bills now, I don't need another job. I would say the difference was primarily my commitment to it. And this faux commitment that I think a lot of people really sort of suggest at. I mean, I remember when I first got over to LA, because it wasn't until I got to LA that, funnily enough, my career seemed to be, or me as an actor, started to get taken a bit more seriously here as well as over there. There seemed to be like this sort of door I walked through, or this club I seemed to enter as soon as there was this moment over there, and it was kind of really bizarre. And I mean, realistically, the difference had come from me. And it was actually my commitment to the work. And for me, I think it comes in many different forms, but primarily it was through exercise for me, and therefore vicariously exercising restraint. It was this question I got asked by my housemate over there, who said, when what do you like? You think this is what you want to do? This is the one thing. This is the most important thing on the planet. Out of 10, how are you operating? What are you doing out of 10? What's your figure out of 10 by way of, sort of achieving that goal? And I was pretty honest. I was at I reckon I was probably at like a 3, like I'd learn my lines.
Yeah.
And I'd talk about it when I was drunk. And I'd hope and pray. And, every time I'd see a movie, I'd wish it was me. But, but what was I actually doing?
So let's just backtrack that a little bit then. So let's say that, when you were auditioning and when you were going for roles, auditioning for film, TV, anything that you were going for, what was the thing that you were focusing on when you were going into the room?
Back then, I guess my biggest concern was how I came across. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be an idiot. I didn't want to come across like a dickhead, I didn't want to be that kid that everybody laughed at, which is completely wrong, and it was doing a degree of work, but for the wrong reason, I guess. I wanted to be invited back to other auditions. I never really set out to get the part. I never really set out to sort of, to play the scene, because I mean, I think it's Bryan Cranston that says it, it's every audition's an amazing opportunity to just for 5 minutes or not even that, you get an opportunity to play that character and be in that scene with someone. And I mean, that's the reward is, the getting the job is the reward. And so taking a little bit of it in the audition room, that was something that I really started thinking about a little bit more before. But I mean, that was experience that taught me that as well. But if you make a mistake in the room, that, it's kind of not the end of the world. And, it's not some test, every audition isn't a test. It's not who can learn the lines the best, it's not that at all. It's a bunch of people trying their best to cast a role that you're trying your best to get. And it's just everybody's trying to figure it out. Nobody's an expert.
So then what changed for you? So then when you did get an opportunity to go, wow, okay, I'm actually getting further and I'm starting to book work or I'm starting to get in these bigger rooms, then did you actually think, okay, what's changing about my process that's actually getting me further along?
Yeah, I reckon it was just that. It was actually through experience realizing that it wasn't, I mean, that age-old expression, you're only as good as your last job. Mm-hmm. I mean, whilst that is relatively true as well, it's not life or death, the stakes aren't that high. So to just sort of, really... Because, I mean, we do our best work when we're relaxed. And, if we go into any audition room thinking it's life or death, we're going to make mistakes, and and we'll walk out and we'll never feel okay. We'll be an anxious wreck in between takes. So we'll never hear what the casting director gives us by way of direction or anything. So just relaxing and settling down, and it sort of, desperation is very pungent as well. Being hungry and being desperate are two very separate things. And I guess making it just primarily about the work, about the character. You know, it's a very easy thing to hide behind if you're feeling very nervous. And I found it was for me going into things when I'd be lying to you if I said I still didn't get nervous. But going into them, it's kind of like a great thing for me is I just make it all about the other person. And it's like, it's actually not about what I'm going to do in the room, you know, how I prepare my accent or anything like that. It's more just, you know, be in relationship with that one person that you're talking to and just put everything on them, you know, like if it's a question, ask them the question and have them flounder for the answer, you know, just do the job. I don't know. That, by the way, I know it sounds really obvious is when you say it out loud, but it really took a lot of stress. It took out a lot of stress for me when I was like, just make it about somebody else. And yeah, I mean, you know, you kind of walk out there with your head held high going, I don't really know what happened, but it didn't feel shit. So
when you do get the job and you're on set,
yeah,
and you've had, you know, probably a really great run in the last few years being on some big sets with some pretty high profile people, you know, Russell Crowe and Mel Gibson, Chris Hemsworth, just to name a few. And what did you feel like you gained or learned from being on those sets?
It's interesting because you always take something different away. Like, so when we did Water Diviner, the one thing I took away from him more than anything, because, you know, I didn't have, I mean, you had quite a few scenes with him, but I didn't have so many scenes with him as such, but it was his communication. Like he just had such an easy way of communicating. Now, whether that's because he was an actor beforehand or whatever, but, you know, the one thing I walked away from there was just how easy it was to communicate with him as a director, and sort of thought, you know, that myself as an actor, that's probably something I could take on too with directors in the future, is just finding a bit more of a middle ground by way of communication. With Chris's on-set presence is just unparalleled. He's just, everybody loves coming to work, you know, and if everybody loves coming to work, they're going to want to go that extra mile. And that 12 Strong movie, I mean, that was not an easy job, you know, that was not an easy job for anybody. And yet, you know, as we've all, you know, I'm sure you've got those experiences too. There are those actors that just want to make people's lives living hell. And he's not one of those guys. And, you know, when he's number one on the call sheet, that permeates down, you know, that affects everybody. You know, working on like Bigelow's set as well, just how much care and compassion she has and how it is all about the work and how, you know, that again was conversation, and that was communication. And I reckon like the one thing, somebody I did learn from who, this was more a technical thing, or is it, I don't know, it was a great attitude thing, I guess. Because I mean, there's a point as well where it's like when you get the role, you know, you're not auditioning anymore. You're their choice. There are a few boxes you can tick for yourself. You know, the pressure is off to perform. Now it's to live and breathe and to, you know, to inhabit that entity. It's not going to be Chris's version of that character in the scene. It's you. That's it. That's it. That's the character now. You know, you're not trying to prove yourself anymore. You just get to live in that, which is such a great thing because you're not really being judged anymore. You just get to go with it. But the thing I learned was from Michael Shannon. And man, he was, you know, getting given some of the most shitty lines in this thing, and they're written like on the fly. It's like, oh, we need Michael Shannon to start calling out bomb coordinates, and it's like Foxtrot 1293 68, you know, all this stuff, and it's like, who in the world is going to remember that stuff? And I mean, I remember laughing every time he got him, and he would just look at it and be like, all right, and just, you know, you could see there were other people like Pena, even though, you know, I mean, he was only joking all the time, but Michael Pena would always sort of go, what is this shit? You know, like, what the fuck? I've got enough to learn without all this crap. You can't just give this to me on the day. And Shannon would just kind of take it and do it. And I remember watching him and sort of thinking, I'm like, hey, that's pretty awesome, man. Like, I mean, you've saved so much time by biting the bullet and just going,
they're doing it.
Fuck it, you know, I mean, I guess I've got to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So we can complain about it for 20 minutes or I can just do it. And, I mean, you know, he's such an incredible actor that I was watching him and going, I might do that in the future, actually. I might shut up a little more.
Do you think the best actors are always working on themselves as much as they're working on the projects that they're doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I'd pay that. Yeah, 100%.
Because I feel it's one thing that I've noticed, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like the actors that are either really experienced, they're constantly, they know who they are, but they're also working on themselves.
Yeah.
And in a way, what they're doing is that they're a vehicle for the storytelling.
Yeah.
But the ones that really have a good sense of themselves, it's more than their capability. It's actually more about, you know, how they know that they can deliver, but they're constantly working on it.
Yeah. It's such a font for them to draw on too. You know, sort of it's kind of a more but like a more full well to draw water out of. You know, and I guess, you know, we're doing our best to fill that well up. You know, I would agree with that. Yeah, 100%. I know it's something I try to do. Like, I mean, I love exercise physically. And I've noticed that it's kind of a common thread with a lot of working actors, be it that or some other form of exercise, whether they're big into yoga or they're, you know, they love sort of low impact competitive sports or something like that. There are these sort of, these things that kind of keep the mind sharp. Because, you know, it can be, you know, our most exhausting days are the ones where we've just sat on the couch and done nothing. You know, we're just so foggy-minded. It's like when you got a hangover, you know, the best cure for it is to actually just do something, and the hangover seems to become secondary.
Right.
So I kind of think, I actually think a lot of people, and I think this of a lot of young artists too, are just in a perpetual state of being hungover. You know, you know, you just see so many people that they just want so much, and, you know, willing to do so little.
Right.
Even if it is just get off the couch and do something.
Right.
You know, I've known people that are above, you know, independent theatre, and it's like, how can you be above independent theatre? You're non-existent. You know what I mean?
So why do you think some actors who want to get better at their craft, rather than just doing film and television, they go back to theatre? Like the idea of, because theatre, I think, you know, can be something that a drug that you really want to go back to because it gives you something immediate.
Yeah.
Because
it's like a smack, man.
Well, yeah, but it is because that, you know, you got an audience. You can judge the responses. You can come off this stage at the night and you go, hey, that was great, or I felt that tonight. That was really great, and you get an immediate response.
Yeah. You're right.
But a film, you got 6 months, 12 months. You don't know.
No, you're right though. You're right. I mean, that you nailed it, man. I mean, that's what I love most about theatre, and I know a lot of people do. It's you know, it's different every night. You get another go at it every night, you know. And I mean, you know, you spend your 4 to 6 weeks rehearsing, or sometimes longer, and then, you know, then you get to be in that room. What I love is it's unique. It's that one experience, you know, and it's all about the craft. I think, you know, it's not about gratitude. It's not about glory. It's not about looking good. It's not about, you know, it's all about it's just a series of moments that you get to share with a paying or a non-paying audience, or, you know, it's just collectively this one thing people join together to share in. And tomorrow night will be completely different. You know, it's unique to that one moment. But I got my first experience of that at drama school. We're doing the Laramie Project.
Yeah, I did that play.
Oh yeah, right. So you remember there's a line that one of the characters says. He says, you know, do you cry on TV for all of your patients or just the faggots?
Oh, that's right.
And I remember I had to deliver that line, and it was a matinee of all things at Whopper. So, you know, we've probably got 8 people in the crowd, and they're all quite elderly, you know. And there was an audible gasp in that moment. And it really took me by surprise. It's the first time I'd ever really sort of felt an interaction, you know, so much. And I was really quite, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Like, it really moved me. And I went off stage and I was just like, oh, wow, that's what people are talking about, that, you know. And once you feel it, once you find it, it's like you say, it's our drug. You chase after it. And you can have that on film, you know. I think it's what we pursue all the time on film. But, you know, we only get so many goes at it, and then it's there, it's forever, and you're like, oh God.
So that's something that comes up a lot, you know, that it's about the audience, not about you.
Yeah.
You're talking about getting your attention off yourself on the other person. So what is the common thing that you feel like, you know, that you can relate to theatre and to film that is a big core of what acting is?
Acting is always, for me, what happens between two people. It's not what an individual does. You know, for the nitpickers, like when you talk about soliloquies or monologues, it's actually, you know, you need to think about who that monologue is for, or what that monologue is in relation to, what the relationship is there, why these words are being spoken. But it's always about what's between two things, I've always felt. And so therefore it's like a game of tennis, you know, and you'll often, I think this is why we need to be incredibly generous, because, you know, it's like, you know, you don't want to play the wall, you know.
Right, because the wall doesn't give anything back.
The wall gives you nothing back. If anything, the wall's going to fuck you. You know, you never beat the wall. You know, that's not a team effort. So, but by way of that, I think the common theme is that it's always about what you're doing to the others. Why is the character speaking? You know, why? What are they saying? I mean, for me, I've always been obsessed with why. why people do things, why, why somebody will say that, why somebody will just feel it's okay to push in front of you in the supermarket, that individual. I've always been fascinated by why, and you go, oh, because they must think less of those around them, they must be very narcissistic, you can draw all these, and then inevitably, you'll probably have to play a character like that just does push in front, and you go, hey, thank God I asked why, because now I've got maybe a couple of reasons.
So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and I just want you to say the first thing that comes to mind, right?
Oh man,
As
okay,
in, like,
I didn't study.
No, that's okay. How does someone like yourself keep learning?
Oh, you know what? By staying curious, by looking into things that I know nothing about.
Do you believe acting can be learned or taught, or do you think it's actually within someone? You're a born actor.
I believe it's within someone. Mm-hmm. I personally do believe it's within someone, but I believe to a degree it's within everybody. It's the people you're just drawn to. I think anybody with, I do think it is, but by that rationale as well, it does need to be drawn out of people. I think the biggest thing with acting is just confidence and self-belief. So many people think they can't do it and they've lost the battle before they even show up, and it's like, and training did that for me. Training definitely did that for me. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, not at all. So then what gives you self-belief?
I remember, because I come from a family that, that we're not very sort of artsy or, very sort of cultural in that sense. So, wanting to be an actor was a little left of field. And so it was always something I really wanted to do. And it was something my parents supported me with and everything. But I went to an all boys school that was, really rugby, and, I was playing a lot of rugby and stuff like that. And it wasn't really something young men did in my world. And not that anybody shunned it. There was no, there's no sort of started from the bottom type thing. And I remember I always had this thing of like, I'll do it on the day, And one of the best things drama school taught me was to just get rid of that. To go, it's okay to fail. It's okay to be wrong, because everything is everything's in flux. Everything is a work in progress. Everything, even final products, that was where I was at the time. You talk about progress. I mean, what's your experience of watching yourself back? Do you always, because it's inevitably, it's always a year later, right? Yeah. Roughly after editing and after, post and all that sort of stuff.
It's like a time capsule. I remember the first time we had the screening of Water Divine and we sat there, and I remember people in the audience going, like, Mikey Dorman going, kind of having these, he was making audible sounds. And I remember watching it, and I actually got taken away because I remember the experience of being on that horse, being in that place. Yeah. And that was something that was really like, you can't fake that. Yeah. No. As in the smell, it was very visceral. So I was actually taken away, but I wasn't watching the acting the first time I saw it. Yeah. I was taken by the story, and I was like, isn't that like when you read a book? When you read a book the first time, you read the story.
That's pretty cool.
So I didn't even watch myself. The second time I was like, oh, okay. And then the third time, which I've only watched it 3 times, and it was the 2 premieres and then once after that. Yeah. Because it's not that I can't watch it, it's that experience is tied to when we did it. And then if I'm being objective, if I want to watch what I'm doing and go, oh, what was that about? Oh, gee, I wasn't as focused there. Or when you're doing ADR, when you go, you really see your performance and you try to match it with your voice, or you try and improve it. Yeah. I find that's when you have to be really objective about it. Yeah. I'm better now. Yeah. I wasn't good at it at the beginning. I hated watching it.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And you accept certain things.
Do you reckon that's because it's difficult at that? Because you put so much pressure on yourself, it's difficult to be objective about it. It's more a subjective thing. Like I found that's why I hated watching myself back, because I just couldn't just go, all right, that's me. Yeah. Now, how about the work?
Right. Know? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you can add a beard, add an accent, add some other things. Yeah. But essentially, you're the person that has to deal with you and your experience of what you did. Other people are the ones that come and tell you, which is what's more surprising of how different you were. And that's something that I really love. I think that's the power of storytelling, is that they experience the story, you experience your version of the story through what you remember of what you did, and then also whether you're happy with it or not, sometimes it's actually irrelevant. I think unless you're taking an acting class and trying to perfect or change things, or you're technically looking at something, I think you just have to give over.
Dissecting it in the moment,
you surrender to it. You know?
Watching things back, just to say that everything is always a work in progress. I know done my best to objectively watch things back, and I typically I'll watch anything back that I've done, and it always comes to, I'd probably do something different now. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? It's like what you said with the story. You're going along with the story, you're following your character's trajectory, and then you go, ooh, that now, and it's because, I mean, shit, man, a year ago, I was in a very different place.
Yeah.
And a year ago, this was the most interesting offer I had in me. Now I've got more. Thank God I've got something else. I mean, imagine turning around going, well, that was brilliant.
That was it. Yeah. I'm done.
Perfect.
Amazing. Hello. I'll just turn
That's the
up
time to
when you
quit.
want.
Yeah.
But I also think you realize that in film, it's so much more collaborative in a way.
So much, yeah.
In a way that you have no control over. You do have to do your job. Whereas I think in the theater, like the responsibility of the actor from scene to scene on the journey of the show is more immense. And that's part of the reason why I love the fact that rehearsal, no one touches you. It's just you and the director, and they have other people come in, and so the the process is more precious.
Yeah.
And then in a way,
It's a bit more sacred. Yeah. That's
it's
great.
ritualistic. It's kind of like, and then you can do that with film, but up to a point. Because you have to have those other people there.
Yeah, exactly.
They've got to do their job.
I mean, it's amazing when hair and makeup come in, they're just like, so, ta-da, and you're like, wait, that's what my character looks like? I mean, where'd the glasses and moustache come from? I thought, you know what I mean? And you just go, are we really doing that? And it's like, and that part of it is just completely taken out of your hands. You go, wow, okay, all right, well, let's make that work. And exactly like you say, it becomes this, you make all the elements work. It's everybody coming together to create something. And not that isn't the case with theatre, but it is like, the journey, or the discovery of the journey and the breakdown of those beats, is, like you say, a much more sacred process in theatre. Or I guess it's just a process potentially maybe that we as actors are brought in on a lot sooner. And all these script meetings and all that sort of stuff, and all the storytelling and the figuring out and the table reads and just the demo reads they have for producers and everything like that. I guess your actual cast, they're never really brought in on those
unless you're co-writing or you're collaborating.
Yeah, right.
What would be like a one piece of advice that you would give to a young actor?
To get off your ass. Really ask yourself. Be really honest with that question. What out of 10 am I giving this career? Because honestly, a great way to think of it is, I exercise every day. I train, and that's for me. That's a tick in the box for me. That is me contributing to my career in some fashion every day. I haven't wasted a day if I've done something like that. And that's just an example. There are multiple other things, but it's those. It is go and see a play. It is that idea of what more can you do? Don't drive yourself insane with it, but if there's one more thing you can do it. Because, I mean, I hate to, sort of mention The Rock, but, there is that stigma that he's the hardest working guy in Hollywood. And it's kind of true, though. He's like, what are other people doing that you aren't? And if you always do what you've always done, you'll only ever have what you've always had. It starts with you. So if you want to see difference, you kind of need to be the difference.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a really great point. And the other question I would ask is, what is something that a young actor can do with regards to auditioning?
To do a lot of it, to take classes, to keep an eye out there, because it's experience. You only get, it's like driving a car. I mean, I knew more road rules when I first started driving a car than I do now. I've forgotten them all, but I'm so much more comfortable behind the wheel and less inclined to have an accident. I don't know if that's right, but do you know what I mean? Like, in a way, it's like experience. Wisdom is the daughter of experience, and you're only ever going to be really comfortable around it if you're doing it. And I would say the best way, because the argument is, what if you don't get auditions? Well, take classes. Take classes. Study. Work on yourself.
Yeah, with the medium of self-taping now, and you can
that's
simulate those auditions.
There's no excuse. You Google auditions for whatever, and there are channels where you can. Everybody. Casting directors aren't these scary people. They want to cast the right person for the job. I think good working actors never truly stop working as well. And so by way of, applying that to, getting audition fit, I would say the best thing is to just never stop doing it. It's like, I remember I used to be a delivery driver for a hire company. And I would just run over scenarios. It's like when you're in the shower and you win arguments against fictional people. It's just those sort of things. They are incredibly creative, and they're great avenues to explore elements of yourself that you want to work on, parts of yourself, right? Can you be scary? I don't know, but can you work at it? What makes something scary? I don't know. There's a lot of questions you could really ask yourself, and I think to never stop working and to keep working at it.
What do you do for prep? How do you prep an audition?
I always approach something psychologically before I do. Now, I'm quite lucky. I don't often have trouble learning lines at all. I have a bit of a photographic memory in that sense, but
only in acting though.
Only in acting. Yeah. What's your name? Yeah. Hi. Where am I? Shit. I always approach a character psychologically, and I try to do my best to understand the scene and think like a little bit more macro than I do micro first. And think about my involvement in it, or the character's involvement in it.
Do you break it down to objectives and actions? Or
so especially when you come to a hiccup.
Yeah.
Like, because I mean, they're inevitably at least once in every scene, there's a line where you go, what is that doing there? I don't get it. What is he trying to do? And so when objective and all those sort of things, they definitely come into play. But
what do you do if the scene says sobbing, breaks down, crying?
You know what? I think about the writer that wrote that, and I think, what does the writer want at this point? Because I mean, it's like, because especially when it just leaps off the page, you're like, oh wow, okay, so now he or she is like inconsolably crying,
breaks
like
down.
whoa, where did that come from? And you go, well, dude, I don't think the writer wanted to terrify an audience with that. So I think about what they kind of want. If it's a display of if it's a show of how the character is affected, and obviously it's in some sort of upsetting way, I wouldn't do it I wouldn't do what they say, but I would try to understand what they wanted and give them a happy middle ground. Because if it comes out of nowhere, I mean, you're acting, and there's nothing worse than watching people act.
When you're acting, what are the signs, telltale signs? Do you think?
Well, when you're trying to do people's job for them, like what we said before, when it's about an audience, when it is for an audience. I mean, one of the saddest things in the world is watching somebody try not to cry. And one of the funniest things in the world is watching somebody try not to laugh. It's why bloopers are so funny. And it's why funerals are so sad. Like eulogies, when people are trying to get through a eulogy and they can't keep it together, that just triggers, everybody knows that, and it triggers something in us. Whereas, I often find myself less affected as an audience member when somebody's father dies and they're feeling all of the feelings in the world, rather than, trying to move through, trying to be the hero, trying to be strong for those around him. Again, it makes it's about other people.
So one of my teachers would say, forward motion, not emotion.
That's great. I love that.
But what that means is you're serving the story and what the character wants, not yourself. It's not about what you have to feel, right?
Exactly. It's like, that's awesome, man. It's like, and whilst you're pursuing that, whilst the character is moving forward, whilst it's, it's just another obstacle that the character has to overcome, those little chinks in the armor let you see if you can just see the vulnerability or the humanity through the cracks. I mean, that just breaks your heart. It just, you go, oh my God, here's somebody that's so concerned about saving everybody else that they won't even give themselves time to mourn. I don't know, that breaks your heart.
And whose work do you get inspired by?
Day-Lewis's a lot, I mean, it's I feel like a bit of that's a bit of a no-brainer.
He's like the Babe Ruth of acting.
He really is,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Like, no one's going to hit his average.
No, exactly. It's kind of unfair, really. It's like, the question should be who, apart from
Day-Lewis.
Yeah. But what I've always loved most about him is he steps so far away from himself by way of physicalities,
Voice.
vocals, all that sort of stuff. He works so hard to step so far away from himself, and then drops it all. Like, you can kind of see that he makes it such a part of who he is and what he is at the time, that he can drop it all and just be in the moment with people as that person with all of those mannerisms. So when he doesn't, people talk about him never breaking character. It's not that. It's that he doesn't drop his characteristics. He retains those, so that everything he's doing in those scenes, I mean, you feel it as an audience member. In, like, when he plays Bill the Butcher, anytime he looks down the barrel of the lens, your skin crawls. It's because he's doing that to the other actor, and you're just like, I don't know, man, to have all of these layers and then still come right down from here and give that and make it all about somebody else. I mean, shit, man, that's the rocket science of acting.
Right. So what do you got coming up next?
Next I'll be, I'm starting a play down in Sydney with Sydney Theatre Company. It's called The Harp in the South. It's been adapted by Kate Mulvaney from the book
Ruth Park.
Of the same title by Ruth Park, yeah. So that's going to be kind of like an epic one. It's in the vein of War of the Roses and Cloud Street. So that'll
Which is great, right?
I think so.
Like,
it's a bit different.
People go to a play and they don't get to see that much. Sometimes it requires a huge amount of attention for someone to take in an 8 hours. It's like a miniseries.
Yeah, 100%. You know, and people can sort of binge watch, you know, Game of Thrones. So hopefully they can sort of, you know, sit with us for the whole time. You know, we need more dragons in our show. But so that'll be fun. And then I'm potentially taking off to Europe to shoot a film at the end of the year. But I do have a film coming out this year called Necromancer that we shot with Monica Bellucci and David Wenham, Carolyn Ford, Tess Horbrick, and this boy from New Zealand called Bob Severe. He's a hilarious guy. So that should be a bit fun. It's a sci-fi sort of black comedy, sort of Shaun of the Dead style film.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ben O'Toole, for being our first guest on Factory Access. It's been a pleasure having you here, and it's really fantastic to see you kicking goals.
Thank you very much.
And a big thank you to Mr. Ben O'Toole, and you can catch him live in action in Sydney Theatre Company's A Harp in the South, which is on August 25th to the 6th of October. And also you can see him in Necromancer later in the year.